I think you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Richardson Chamber Annual Congressional Roundtable. I'm Debbie Richards, Director of Community Engagement, Outreach and Recruitment for Richland campus of the Dallas College. Today, our distinguished guests are Congressman Colin Allred, representing District's 32nd Congressional District, and Congressman Van Taylor, representing Texas's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Allred was born and raised in North Dallas, graduated from Hillcrest High School, earned a football scholarship to Baylor. Go ahead, Bill. Thank you. And later earned his law degree from Berkeley. He served in the General Counsel's office in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. He returned to Dallas and decided to run for office. His top priorities in Congress have been lower cost of health care, protect Medicare and Social Security, and create an economy that works for everyone while expanding access to vocational schools and lowering the cost of college. He believes Congress must find common ground to rebuild aging infrastructure, pass immigration reform, and veterans care. And thank you so much for the VA hospital in Garland. Congressman Taylor went to St. Paul's High School in New Hampshire, then gained his bachelor's from Harvard. After graduating, Van joined the United States Marine Corps while earning his MBA from Harvard. Van and his wife Ann married after his return from Iraq and are the proud parents of Laura, Helen, and Susie. Van represented District 66 in the Texas House of Representatives for 5 years. Then he served in the Senate from 2015 to 2019. In 2019, Van Taylor was sworn in as a member of the United States Congress representing the 3rd Congressional District. Representative Taylor served on the House Committee on Homeland Security and on Education and Labor Committees. Congressman Taylor was appointed to serve on the House Committee on Financial Services in January of 2020. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to Bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Congressman, wow, what a period of time that we live in, both for just, the pandemic and what's going on in DC. I think the first thing that we've got to ask you about is what's going to happen in getting an additional CARES Act. Is this going to happen?
Well, I do think that we'll end up getting a package. If you remember in the House, about 12 weeks ago, we passed the HEROES Act, which was our basically CARES 2.0 package to try and deal with just the massive both economic and public health implications of this crisis that we're in. Now, that was always thought that not everything in the HEROES Act was going to be taken up by the Senate. That's how it always is between the House and the Senate. But the Senate did not take any action on any negotiations or consideration of that until about a couple of weeks ago. And now we are in a negotiation with the White House and with the administration. And I do think that there's a lot of areas that already have been agreed to, and there are some that are still outstanding. I have been pushing with everything I have for us to reach a compromise agreement that can cover some of the gaps that are out there. It's not going to be everything I want. It's not going to be everything that our colleagues in the Senate or the White House might want. But if we can, there is very real pain still going on in our country, and we are still very much not in control of this virus. So we need to have a package, and I hope we get one soon.
Congressman Taylor?
I think Colin said it well. We need a package, and it requires both sides sitting down and negotiating in good faith, and certainly that's how we got the first couple CARES packages out, CARES 1, 2, and 3, and so getting CARES 4 out requires everybody to sit down, and there's some give and take there, and there's some pieces of any given legislation when it's a big one that people don't like, but that's making the sausage, and that's governing, and so it is. It's disappointing that Colin and I live in a process that doesn't really allow much input, and it's really kind of done by the top people, and this doesn't allow, I think, a democratic process where Colin and I get to offer amendments, and convince our colleagues this is the right thing to do, and win or lose, that's how it goes. But so I hope that we can get something done. I have to admit, the fact that the House is only meeting for 2 more weeks between now and the election, taking aside the Saturday that just came up earlier a few hours ago. Colin, I found out we got to go back to DC on Saturday to vote on the post office, but that doesn't give me a huge amount of optimism that we're going to get something.
It was fun.
But
So
I know we need
what you needed.
Oh, no.
If you're not speaking, could you go ahead and mute your phone?
It's one of those things that.
Liz, can you go ahead and mute your, there you go. Thank you. So Congressman, and I'll start with you, Congressman Taylor, and go to Congressman Allred. In this next CARES Act, what is it that you think you must have, and what would be a nice to have?
I think something that's very important is to me is making sure that businesses feel comfortable to reopen. There's a lot of concern I hear from a lot of the business community about liability protection. It's a little surprising to me the number of lawsuits that have already taken place against businesses great and small around COVID-19. It is, I guess it's surprising to me just because people have been dying from disease for a long time, and all of a sudden this is an in vogue kind of litigation. Certainly in Texas, we have done a good job of making sure that access to the courts is real. That it's attainable, that people can actually, resolve disputes and find a resolution in the court system. And that's what you want. But what you don't want to do is allow aggressive trial attorneys to abuse the system for their own gain. And so what I'm worried about is seeing that. And so some kind of federal protection for lawsuit liability, I think, is extremely important to me. And I know that Leader McConnell has mentioned that several times. I think that's a must-have for him. I think it's really a must-have for business, and really a must-have for America. I mean, it's not just personalities in DC that want it. It's really coming from Main Street, and I've heard it in meeting after meeting after meeting from businesses that is a must-have. There are a whole variety of other things that we could go into, but I don't want to hog all the time. So, Colin, I'll let you let you share your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, Van's right. There's a lot of things that we could talk about. And I actually agree with Van on the liability protections. I've signed on to a letter to our leadership asking for us to push for that. And, I think I've heard so much from parents and teachers about our schools reopening. And, they have and I've spoken very extensively with our folks at our local school boards here. And, I think they've got a plan, both the ISD, Richardson ISD, Garland ISD, Highland Park ISD, Wiley ISD, all the public schools that I have in my district, they have a plan for trying to keep their students and their teachers safe. But all of what they're looking to do is going to cost money, all of it, from, putting in dividers between desks to try and help limit the spread, to providing masks and hand sanitizer, just PPE in general, to cleaning classrooms between classes and between school days, to staggering the opening and closing of schools. All of the plans they have are going to cost money, and so that's going to have to come from somewhere. In the HEROES Act, we have $58 billion for K through 12 schools to try and cover their additional costs. This is, of course, nationwide, to try and cover the additional costs of reopening during a pandemic, and also to cover the cost of remote learning, because as we know, about a third of the kids in Dallas don't have access to high-speed internet. So remote learning is not always an option for them. But if you can provide them with internet hotspots and with the technology they need to learn from home, then that can be an option for them as well. So, while we're trying to send our kids back to school, we need some federal support for that. And I am, been pushing hard for this, and hope that in the compromise bill that we end up with, that it has funding for K through 12 to try and help them, because otherwise they're going to have huge revenue holes, and that's going to have to come from somewhere, and it'll largely be drawn locally.
Those are obviously important items for schools in your district. Is there anything specific that you have seen in the HEROES Act, or that you want to see in the ultimate bill that comes out, that would benefit your district specifically, or our region specifically?
Yeah.
You want to take that, Colin? Okay.
Oh, sure. Whatever.
Sure. Well, no, I got a quick answer for you so you can think about it. It was something that I'm particularly concerned about, and I think this really it's specific to my district, but it really is in every district in America. Is forbearance on mortgages for commercial real estate. And so the federal government identified very quickly. So in March 13th, actually, of this year, the OCC provided guidance to encourage banks to forbear on the $15 trillion of loans that they have outstanding. And then Congress in the I think in the second CARES Act, instructed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are the two largest home lenders, to forbear on the approximately $8 trillion of home mortgages. And right now, I think as of last month, actually this is about 30 days old data, but the uptake on forbearance is actually around 8% of the home mortgages in the United States are on forbearance. So because of the cash flow crunch that everybody went through in the spring, there's a need to forbear on mortgage debt. Where Congress has not acted at this point is really in the commercial mortgage space. And so there's approximately $5 trillion of commercial mortgage debt. Some of that's bank debt, some of that's Fannie and Freddie debt, so that's kind of taken care of. But there's about $500 billion of collateralized mortgage-backed security debt that does not have a forbearance mechanism. And so I've worked on a bill on a bipartisan basis. It's in financial services, trying to provide the forbearance to prevent a huge catastrophe of foreclosures that really really threatens the entire country, and particularly in the hotel space. And I will share a little bit of Texas data with you. Dallas, about 19% of the hotel mortgages that are CMBS mortgages are in delinquency, but in Houston, it's 65% of the hotel mortgages are in delinquency. So you're seeing excruciating pain. And like in Chicago, it's 54%. In LA, it's 24%. So it's different regions, but there's some parts of the country which are in real trouble. And if Congress doesn't act, there's going to be a wave of foreclosures. And I think for all of us that remember the RTC days here in Dallas, Texas in the 80s and early 90s, it was a very, very painful economic experience of having a very aggressive foreclosure program and then a disposition program that was equally aggressive. And it really collapsed the market financially and a lot of real estate assets that were perfectly fine, not over-levered, perfectly sound, nothing wrong with them. They all went into bankruptcy because the property across the street had traded for pennies on the dollar and could lease for less. You're not really seeing that in the office space or in the apartment space, but you are absolutely seeing that in retail and hospitality. And there are a lot of jobs at stake. What's scary about this is that of the first 24 million Americans who lost their jobs, 6 million in hospitality were in the hotel space. And so that's a really important job center that will not come back if we do not do something to stop the wave of foreclosures that is imminent. And we're already seeing, I'm aware of several large portfolios of hotels that have already been taken back by the lender. And that pain is going to accelerate over the next several months unless Congress acts. So that's something that I've been working on, again, on a bipartisan basis. And I'm grateful. And I will point out what's interesting to me is that a lot of the legislative, a lot of other members of Congress are not aware that their community is hurting as bad as it's hurting. So that's something I've been working on, and obviously I could speak forever on it. So
an interesting Richardson twist on that. I spoke to the general manager of one of our largest hotels last week, and the situation, excuse me, his hotel has gone from bad to worse because he was at least getting people staying in the hotel over the weekends. Couples coming in for a staycation, using the pool. They don't have any food service, but at least, they could get away. Well, now that school's open up again, he's down to maybe 15 room nights a week. And all the major companies that, would generally pack his hotel with business travel are telling him that they're just not going to be doing it for the rest of this year and well into next year. So it's a legitimate problem, no doubt. Congressman Allred, how about something specific that you want to see for your district or our region?
Well, I agree with Van's suggestion, and that sounds really important and interesting, and I'm glad that he's leading on that. For my district, I've been pushing very hard for our airline industry. So, y'all know that we have both Southwest and American headquartered here in North Texas, and we have Love Field and DFW that are enormous economic engines for us. But we are right now about a month away from over 100,000 airline employees around the country losing their jobs, going either on being furloughed or being laid off entirely or taking early retirement of some kind. And that's a problem for many reasons, partly because these are jobs that you need to have certifications for when you come back. So it's not just like, unlike the hospitality industry, which is being hit extremely hard, Van's right, you can't just hop back into these jobs. You have to get recertified. And if you have a gap in your time, it can set back how long you come back. And for us, when we do emerge from this economic crisis, we're going to need our airline industry to be in place for us to have any kind of economic recovery. And for North Texas, it's extremely important. I mean, many of the folks we're talking about here live here in North Texas, and it's an incredibly important part of our economy, having this airline industry. So there's a program that was in the CARES Act called the Paycheck Support Program. That's the PSP. So everybody knows about PPP, but this is the Paycheck Support Program that kept these airline employees employed. We need to extend that program from the CARES Act. It will cost about $25 billion, which sounds like a lot, but the economic importance of it will far outweigh that. And we've already seen that from the CARES Act money, that keeping those folks employed was extremely important in the first part of this year. And so, I'm in pretty constant contact with our airline industry here and with our executives and talking to them about what we can do to keep them afloat, because we all want to emerge from this crisis, whenever that may be, whether it's through a vaccine or a therapeutic or through other means, with the ability to get back to normal life as quickly as possible. And that will be extremely curtailed if we don't have our airline industries there. And you are looking at, 1 or 2 flights a day to the places you want to go, instead of what we're used to here in North Texas, which is basically having our pick of when we want to fly and where we want to fly, which we've had for so long. And so I've been pushing hard for that. There's a bill that would do this, and we're trying to have it included in the package. I think it has over 290 co-sponsors, so it's got a lot of bipartisan support, and it's being led by the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Peter DeFazio. I'm also on the Aviation Subcommittee, so it's something that I'm been working on for some time, and I'm hoping that will be included. It's a bipartisan, will help all across the country, and will keep a lot of people in their jobs and be important for our economy.
The original PSP money runs out the end of September, is that right?
Yeah, so yeah, and you've probably seen a number of, there's been a really large number of notices that have gone out to airline employees saying that you will be furloughed October 1. Those notices would be immediately revoked if we get PSP, and so that's kind of the stakes of what we're dealing with here.
We're going to affect some people's Christmas and Thanksgiving plans if they don't get that money.
Yeah. And I mean, think about the impact of that many people having to go on to unemployment, health insurance, and you can kind of just go down the line. I mean, the impacts just really ripple out. Yeah,
it's a whole new wave. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So got some questions that one of our members wants me to ask that are in chat. So the president signed some executive orders. One of those had to do with the payroll tax, and I don't know whether it's a deferral or an abatement, or could one of you comment on what the issue is with respect to payroll tax and kind of what you think should happen?
Yeah, well, it is a deferral, and it would just take that tax out, I think, at the end of the year, and the president said, reelected, he'll make it permanent. Well, it would take an act of Congress to make that permanent, first of all. So we have the taxing power is within the Congress. And also is how we fund Social Security, which is a program that so many seniors rely on, and that already the Social Security Trust Fund is already in tough shape. And so to have this take place would be a real hit there to our Social Security and to our seniors. And so it's not what it was billed as, is kind of a tax cut. I think many employers are just going to continue to withhold that because they're going to end up having to pay it eventually anyway. And when you have 29 million Americans unemployed, payroll tax cuts not the most targeted way to get money in their pockets. That's why we are talking about another round of direct payments, as well as the unemployment insurance extension that I think will be included, whether it's the original $600 or whether it's something lower. I think that will be in the final negotiation too.
Yeah,
Congressman Taylor,
sure. I'll just add on, just from, just as from an employer's point of view, even if it's deferred, it's effectively a loan to the business, right? So if I know, hey, if I was collecting whatever, my payroll was $100,000 a week, and I was paying, $4,000 in unemployment tax every week. Well, now I can accrue that for 15 weeks, and then I've got to write a check at the end, but I'm actually it's in effect a loan to that business, and it's a bigger loan at the end and a smaller loan at the beginning, but it does give employers greater flexibility financially. And I've talked to a couple of employers where that would actually make a difference. I mean, we are in a really difficult business environment, and I've talked to a ton of employers that are incredibly grateful for the PPP loans. So if PPP helped you, I'm glad it did. That was what it was designed to do. And I know that just giving greater financial flexibility, and even if it's a small deferral of an obligation, similar, it's like forbearing a loan, right? I mean, well, you just forbear a loan, you're still going to owe the interest. Yeah, that's not the point. The point is you're trying to give some financial flexibility to that business entity. So for those employers out there, it can make a huge difference. Some of them are just, as Colin said, are just going to collect it, sit in a bank account. It's not going to do anything for them. But what's nifty to know is, wow, I can put it in a bank account, and then I can use it in October, and then I got to pay it back in December. So it is a deferral and it's not an excuse. But again, we've been doing a lot of that, and I think we've been doing it with thought. And I think this is another way of really helping employers, and that has been a real focus that I've seen as we piece together the policy around the economic side of this health crisis, is trying to help the employer. So like the PPP, emphasis on forgiveness is the emphasis is on spending money for employment, right? And so the idea is to help employers, because if you help the employer, you're helping the employee, right? You can't have an employee without an employer. That's just.
So would the employee also get the deferral and have to pay it all at the end of the year or the beginning of next year?
So the employer is the one that owes it, and so they can still deduct it and then hold on to it, or they could pay it and then go back. But the employer is the one that's obligated to pay it. So it is, as Colin said, it'll be deducted, but rather than being deducted and sent immediately to the federal government, it could go sit in the employer's bank account. And again, for some employers, that's going to make a difference. That's going to be a material number, and it just gives greater flexibility, which is really, a lot of this is about flexibility. It's about, hey, you don't have to pay right now. And that's what I was talking about. That's what we did, the OCC. That's why we're, whatever, deferring home mortgages, right? Same basic concept.
Right. So I assume, Congressman Allred, your point is that if the employer is just going to hold on to the money, including for the individual, then those direct payments, those stimulus payments, are just all that much more important to give, people some relief.
Yeah, well, I just think we need to be targeted with our relief, and the PPP program does that. The direct payments do that. Unemployment insurance extension does that. This, I think, is not as targeted. And again, this goes into the Social Security Trust Fund, and so it's not just talking about delaying. He's talking about making this permanent, which is a different conversation, because then you're talking about having to make severe and deep cuts to Social Security, which a lot of people already rely on, and many think is already not adequate for their needs. So, that's what we're talking about here. But, Van's right. We've had a bipartisan consensus around keeping people employed and keeping the relationship between the employer and the employee for many reasons, for healthcare, for the ability for them to reopen quickly when things do come back, so they don't have to go searching for new employees, just to maintain that relationship. To prevent people from having to go onto the unemployment rolls, which have been overwhelmed, and some folks are still struggling to get their unemployment through the Texas Workforce Commission. So we have a lot of bipartisan consensus around that, and we all want to see people stay employed. And then when the economy, when the virus is in a place where we can move forward with confidence on the economic side, you won't have this long delay in terms of having to find people and get back up to speed.
So you're both being called back to DC for, I assume, a vote on Saturday regarding, I don't know what it's already been called, this postal gate or post office gate or whatever it is, but we've got a couple questions in chat relating to it. So I'll just read this. With the sizable early voting provisions already in place, why are Congress and the White House spending so much time and energy fighting over the Postal Service and mail-in ballots?
I'll just kind of start off with, start at the beginning. In the Constitution, the federal government's responsible to have a postal system. It's a really, really important feature of American life. I think it's been one of the things that has made our country great, literally for 200 plus years. I mean, it's an important thing. You have to have it. You want to have a good postal system, and I think that the ability to vote by mail is something that, when I was in the state legislature, the first bill I filed actually allowed our military personnel to request to receive a ballot electronically and then send it in through the postal system. And that's actually it's actually the largest expansion of mail-in voter rights we've had in the state in decades. So I'm certainly a believer in making sure that people have the opportunity to vote. And I think it's important to have a postal system that works. And with that, I'll let Colin, you throw out your bombs, buddy. You go for it.
Sure. Well, no, I mean, I agree with Van that the Postal Service is a foundational aspect of our democracy. It's not just about mail-in voting, by the way. I mean, that is what the fight has been in the press about. But I mean, the Postal Service performs so many critical services that are already being delayed right now, and 80% of our veterans get their medication through the mail. The VA, 100% of the medications the VA sends out goes through the Postal Service. Our seniors rely on getting their meds in the mail. People on fixed incomes rely on Social Security checks and their retirement checks arriving in the mail. Small businesses rely on the Postal Service because of its low cost and reliability. So this is something that has impact across our country and across our economy. And let's not pretend like we don't know what's happening here. I mean, the president has openly said he doesn't want to fund the Postal Service because he doesn't want people to vote by mail. He's openly said that. So it's not a Democratic position. It's not a Republican position. That's what he has said his goal was to try and do to prevent this funding going in. They're removing these sorting machines from Postal Service, from the facilities that sort all the mail. I've been to the Dallas one. That's one of the largest in the country. Those machines are critical. A lot of them are getting older, but they are critical. And if you're going to make some changes there, you think you would wait till after election to do that. They're removing mailboxes around the country. They have changed the senior leadership in the Postal Service from career officials who have been there for 30 plus years in many cases to folks who are new to their jobs. And, so this is this is not just about, mail-in ballots and whether or not people should be able to do that or anything like that. That's governed by state law, as Van knows better than I do. Here in Texas, you can vote by mail under a few circumstances. If you're in the military, if you're 65 or older, if you have a disability, or if you're outside of the voting location for the entire voting period, you can vote by mail. Those are the scenarios in which you can vote by mail. Some states, including Republican-led states like Utah, allow universal vote by mail because they are the circumstances of their state, because they have wide open spaces and they don't have it's much more cost effective for them to not have to have polling places where only 3 or 4 people are going to come in. So they all allow them to vote by mail. Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and they have had very, very few instances of any kind of fraud. And that's governed by state law, and that's governed by states enforcing their laws in those states. What we are supposed to do at the federal level is provide them with a postal service that operates and that functions correctly so that they can do that. That has nothing to do with how you feel about that state's voting laws. And that is determined in our federalist system by that state. And so, it's not like it's universal vote by mail around the country. It just depends on the state and it depends on their laws in that state. And so, I have said that during a pandemic, I believe everyone in Texas should be able to request a vote by mail ballot because we are asking folks not to gather indoors and not to touch common objects for their health. That's one of the things that we are constantly preaching and repeating to try and avoid the spread of this virus. But that decision has not been made. I accept that. But those who are still voting by mail, including members of my family who have high risk conditions, and who are 65 or older, should be able to request their ballot as they always do and mail it in as they always do and have it received. That's our democracy. That's the way it works. But when you try and mess with that because you don't like potentially the result of it, that crosses over into something else. And so I think it's critical that we fund the Postal Service. I think it's critical that we stop some of the sabotage that's going on there. This is not what we do in our country. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I can tell you there are a lot of democracies around the world where the leader in power finds different ways to say that different types of voting or different votes that come in are not acceptable and to stay in power. That's not what we do in this country. We have free and fair elections, and if you win, you win. And if you lose, you lose, and we transition power. And that's the height of our democracy, is the transition of power. And so, you know, I just think this shouldn't be a political issue. It shouldn't be something that we disagree on whether or not we want to have a postal service that functions correctly. We can talk at a later date about reforms that may be needed at the Postal Service, but that is not what's happening here. What we're seeing here is deliberate attempts to sabotage the mail. And to me, that is not only wrong, it's against who we are as a country.
So it's probably important for us to, or for you, either of you, to clarify who can and who cannot vote by mail in Texas, in your districts.
Yes, like I said, you have to be, you know, Van was a state legislator, but I was a voting rights attorney. So in Texas, you have to be 65 or older, and you can request a mail-in ballot. You have to have a disability that prevents you from being able to go to the polling place or outside of the voting area that you vote in for the entire election period, so including early voting. And I will say this, the governor, to his credit, has extended early voting for the fall election by 6 days, which I think is a really good step and an important step that will give us a chance to get as many people in and to stagger the vote as much. So hopefully we won't see what we often see on election night, especially in presidential years in Texas, which is very long lines, people standing around and waiting. That is not good in any year, but it's particularly bad during a pandemic, and that's what we want to avoid.
Congressman Taylor, anything you want to add?
No, I agree with Colin. I hope people take advantage of the early voting opportunity that's being afforded. I know during the primary, I was kind of stressed that, gee, where is everybody? And during early voting, and there was a huge rush on election day and primary. Like, gosh, like there would be no lines if you showed up last week or the week before. So for those of you that vote and you know how you're going to vote, just go vote early, get it knocked out. There's plenty of chance to do it. And the earlier vote, generally the less the line. So there you go. There's my public service announcement. I think Colin's nodding in agreement. Please go vote early. Don't wait till the last minute.
So one of our attendees is asking the question, shouldn't there be a requirement for companies and people to have enough savings or reserves to last for a minimum of 6 months? If we print money to bail out every time, then the savers and prudent people get penalized for those who do not.
Yeah, I think the system, this is unprecedented. I mean, I will say that, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say not many people saw this one coming, and so given that unprecedented nature, I think that Congress is doing the right thing by trying to help, not necessarily relieve those who've made bad decisions out of responsibility, but really trying to defer the pain so that they can actually handle it over a period of time. I will say, this is a longer, broader comment about budgeting, but the federal budgeting process, which was implemented in 1976, and the 43 budgets that have been tried in that process, only 4 have been done on time, and we have not had a balanced budget in 22 years. So you have 23 years. So you have a totally, and actually, Colin and I have never voted on a budget. That's shocking but true. So you have a budget, and this is in stark contrast to the state government. So in the Texas legislature, they've voted every budget on time and balanced since 1963. And it's not that it's law, because it's law in Texas to do a balanced budget. It's law in the federal government to do a balanced budget. One just ignores the law and doesn't do it. But you have a completely broken budgeting system. Interestingly enough, in the previous budgeting system that they had from 1975 until the mid-20s, it was only unbalanced about 6 of those budgets, and it was always on time, and they never had a shutdown. So we've had, in the last, Colin and I came into Congress together in the middle of a budget shutdown. And I thought that was really unusual, but then you start pulling the history books back and you realize that in the last 21 Congresses, there have been 21 shutdowns. So clearly this budgeting system is a bust. It's never worked. It's been overhauled. It was overhauled in '83, overhauled with Graham Rudman in the '90s. It was overhauled in 2011 with Budget Control Act. And none of those overhauls have really stopped. And basically the problem is you have 12 separate voting appropriations bills, whereas in the state government, most governments, city of Richardson, Dallas Independent School District, they do a single bill budget. They do all budgeting in one bill, and that's the only way you can spend money. In Congress, there's no such restriction, and it makes it a complete mess. And no one's been able to make it work. I mean, it's not like it worked great for Newt Gingrich and it's never worked for anybody. Tip O'Neill, Barack Obama, whoever, name your guy, name your gal, no one can get it to work. So, but anyway, Colin?
Yeah, well, Van and I both agree on the need for a number of reforms for Congress. So you're not going to have me sitting here saying that this process is working. But I will say that this crisis, as Van said, was one that was forced upon us. It wasn't something that anyone's bad decisions led to, or any business that was is in the position they're in should be said that this is their fault. I mean, the airline industry is a great example. They actually had done a lot of very positive reforms in recent years and were in their best place economically before this crisis started. American and Southwest were doing really well. And now they are looking at what is for them a far worse crisis than 9/11 or really anything in the modern era. And so if we don't help the airlines through this, we will lose them. And we will see the economic pain of that will be much worse than the stimulative resources we're putting in to try and keep them afloat. And so this is similar to a wartime footing in many ways, in which what we're doing is responding to a crisis and having to get through the crisis. This is not just spending for spending's sake. And I hope everybody understands that the PPP program, for example, that we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into, the people that has kept employed and the businesses that's kept open, that's been important, because then those folks are still spending money in the economy, and we're still moving along. We could be seeing record, unseen before in this country levels of unemployment if it weren't for the actions that we've taken. And Van has talked about this before on some of our calls together. But what we've done here in the United States on a bipartisan basis is far different and more aggressive than what they've done in Europe, for example. And I think we will be better positioned to emerge from this in part because of that. So, I know the numbers are big, but the scale of the crisis is unfortunately extremely big. And that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, actually, if I could just build onto that, I know I probably should have said this, but just one other point I think it's important people to remember. So that Congress has spent about $3 trillion through this, but about $1.5 trillion of that are basically loans. And so the loan, for instance, the Main Street Lending Program, that's $500 billion. That should all get paid back. Or a vast majority, 99% of it, or 98 or something like that. But a lot of the TALF money, so the federal government lent money into the different bond markets to help kind of bring liquidity back into that. All the TALF lending in 2008, it all got paid back with interest. So the taxpayer didn't lose out on anything, actually made a little money. And I think that you're going to see a similar plan here. So I think it's important to just keep in mind that it isn't just like $3 trillion went out the door and it's gone. I think about half of it actually is going to come back, and a lot of that actually will come back with some interest. And so, and again, that's just lending in this. And it's not really the role that I envision for government. That's not what I didn't wake up and say, hey, when I get to Congress, I'm going to create this $1 trillion lending program. That is not how I'm wired. Quite the opposite. I want federal government out of it. I want the industry, because it's just more innovative and thoughtful. But in this case, you had tremendous liquidity crunches across the board, and the federal government stepped in, and they did it in 2008, and it worked fine. I don't think anybody, the hindsight 20, there was a lot of worry that it wouldn't work and that the money would be lost. That didn't happen. I think you're about to see it work for a second time here, which I think validates the methodology.
So speaking of budgets, I know that last month was really busy for the audit of the House appropriation subcommittees and marking up. Where are we at in terms of the budget process for next fiscal year? And are we just going to end up with a continuing resolution?
Yeah, we will most likely have another continuing resolution. We'll pass them in the House. So we'll pass our 12 budgets, as Van said. They will likely not be taken up by the Senate, or the Senate will take up different versions, and then we will have to get through the end of the year. And Van and I both agree on the need for change in the budgeting system, and that's something that But for example, our Defense Department appropriations that we just did was done on a bipartisan basis. It came out unanimously out of the committee. So all the Democrats and all the Republicans on the committee supporting it, passed the House. And so there are areas where you're seeing broad agreement. And of course, there are some where we're not. And so that's been the struggle, is that not all of the budget agreements will go through, and some of them will have to go into CRs. And I'm looking at, in particular, our reauthorization of our surface transportation reauthorization for our infrastructure. I have a lot of things I'd like to see done differently for Texas. We had a bill that we passed that would, I think, fund a lot of our infrastructure needs here. That will probably, unfortunately, have to wait until next year for that to become law.
So of the 12 bills, how many have been passed by the House?
I think it's 8 or
9.
10. Colin.
Yeah, I think 9 maybe. Yeah, I'd have to take a look, but.
I know we haven't done our legislative appropriations bill. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, right. That's always.
So one of the controversies in the original CARES Act was the $600 a week extra money the federal government put in towards unemployment insurance. And a number of employers, particularly small businesses, felt like that was a disincentive for unemployed people to go back to work. And some of them, were trying to call people back, and they just said, I'm making more money unemployed and getting this extra $600. I know that, the Senate had looked at a different version in the House in terms of the amount of money that would go into it. What are your thoughts? Is this a real problem? And, what's the right solution?
I definitely have heard from employers. I'm talking to one employer who said, I have 1,300 job openings, and because of the hourly wage, I can't compete with the $600 a week that unemployment's paying. I've got 1,300 jobs open. I don't have people to work in them because I'm competing with unemployment. And I think, we clearly want to incentivize people to work. I think there's certainly dignity in work. There are jobs that people can do. And so I think that my guess is that you will see Congress come down from the 600 a week to a lower number. I think Colin alluded to that earlier. But certainly, I think it's important that we give people to back that incentive to work, because it's not just a 600 a week, it's 600 a week plus whatever the state was putting in. And so some states had more generous unemployment benefits than others, and so they're actually having a harder time getting people to go back to work.
I'll just say that, I've certainly heard some stories similar to Van, but the large national studies that have been done have said that the unemployment, the plussed up unemployment insurance was not the number one. Two, it was actually the third reason why some folks were not returning to work. The number one reason was concern about their health. Number two was childcare. And then number three was the unemployment. So there are a lot of things that are making it harder for many different people to re-enter the workforce. And there are very real concerns out there. And, I've said this from the very beginning, that regardless of what we do on the benefits side to get through this crisis, the only thing that's really going to restore confidence, both in people as consumers and as employees, is to get a handle on this virus and to treat it much more aggressively, to be on the front foot, to really attack the virus. We had 5,000 cases come in yesterday that were delayed. None of those were contact traced in Dallas County. So 5,000 cases that, over the course of several months that we didn't get the results about them back. And so they were all reported yesterday, but none of them were contact traced because of reporting errors. That's a big mistake for us. And that means that a lot of people were exposed to COVID who may have been able to avoid that. And so, in the HEROES Act, we had $75 billion for testing, contact tracing, and for quarantining and isolating. And this is a really important thing that the public health experts have been stressing more recently to me, which is that not everyone can quarantine in their own home. And we all know this from living in our own homes, but particularly when you're talking about folks who live in multifamily units that are maybe multi-generational within that unit. It's basically impossible to quarantine in that kind of a setting. And what we're seeing is family spread within the family, and that is extremely dangerous, particularly for their older family members or more vulnerable family members who may be living in that home. And so this plan calls on using some of our vacant hotel space to try and offer that as an option, not a mandatory thing, but as an option for folks if they want to quarantine. And the contact tracing is important too. I mean, we have done not a very good job, both in Texas and this country, on contact tracing. But the biggest component of that is having quick and rapid result turnaround so that you know what your results are in a timely manner, both so that you can tell people you know, but so that the public health experts can help you reach out to folks. And so we've got a lot of work to do on that. You know, we're north of 170,000 dead now. We have to take this virus more seriously than we have. I am glad that the mask mandate is showing real positive results here in North Texas. And just going around, you know, I'm seeing a lot of folks wearing their masks. I'm seeing very few people, particularly inside and indoors, not wearing a mask. I think that's a very positive thing for us, and shows that when you give people information on how they can protect themselves, they will. But at the national level, we need to have a national strategy and plan that we can help our states and municipalities implement to take this virus and wrestle it down, particularly given that we are now heading into our fall and winter period, which our experts from the very beginning have said that this is going to be the most dangerous time for us with COVID, because folks are indoors more often. It's already a time when viruses like this spread more easily. And we know that we have a flu season coming up that combined with the stress of COVID, the flu season will push our healthcare system past its capacity if we don't do something about this. And so I'll say that, number one, everybody on this call get a flu shot, have everybody you know get a flu shot. We all have to have a role to play in trying to make sure we keep the flu from becoming a huge problem for us this fall. But we need to get a hold of this. And I think that's going to require us to put the resources, the time, the effort, and the plan behind it to do it.
It was interesting. I was out at the restaurant with my wife for only the fourth time during the pandemic, and we wore masks in all the way to the dining table, and only took them off when we were served a drink. And almost everybody else in the restaurant did, except young people. The young people that are coming into the restaurant weren't wearing their masks, and I was just shaking my head going, you got to be kidding me. I want to turn to the Paycheck Protection Loan Program. A couple questions. Do you anticipate that the next CARES round will include a second wave of PPP loans? And are good old, wonderful, necessary chambers of commerce going to be included as eligible entities for the PPP?
The quick answer, and I think we're getting to lightning round time here, but I think the quick answer to both of those is, I would guess, is no. I mean, I've signed on to the bill for chambers, and I think that PPP has been really important for a lot of businesses, but I'll let Colin. Colin's crystal ball might be a little clearer than mine on this one.
We do, Van and I are both supportive of letting C6s like chambers access PPP. The idea of the program is to keep people employed. So I don't care what your structure is. It should be keeping you employed. I don't know, to be honest, if there will be additional money. There is already money in the PPP program available now. So folks can still feel confident that they can request PPP. I have co-sponsored a bill to try and allow businesses who have not reached their maximum to take a second bite of the apple if they need to of PPP funds. And there's another bill that I'm co-sponsoring around lower level loans. We're talking about pretty much micro loans. There's a lot of concerns with having to deal with the paperwork and the bureaucracy around getting their actual forgiveness. And that there's a bill to try and just forgive that so they don't have to go through all those hoops, because that's going to be a big hurdle for some of our really small businesses to actually comply with.
Sure. Yeah, that's HR 7777, or Quad 7, as I like to call it. Colin and I are both on that one too. So
Chris Connolly from KERA wants to ask, what measures are necessary to ensure very small businesses and Black and Latino-owned businesses are able to access the next round of small business aid at the same rates as larger and white-owned businesses? Are those measures in the HEROES Act, or do you think the Senate Republicans will support those measures? Yeah.
Well, we did that in a package that we passed before the HEROES Act, setting aside $60 billion specifically for CDFIs, for minority-owned institutions, for credit unions, for lenders who had a better track record in terms of reaching some of the types of small businesses that you're talking about. And so, we are hopeful, and I think we're seeing some evidence that is having some success, but we still have a lot of work to do And I know, we're working with SBA, and my office is working extremely hard to try and reach every small business that we can and make sure they know what is available to them. And we're working with all the various groups of any kind that we can, like this one, like the Richardson Chamber and the Dallas Regional Chamber, which has been extremely helpful in terms of trying to spread information about the PPP program. And so, unfortunately, in the early rounds of PPP, we saw that particularly the large national lenders only dealt with the folks they had pre-existing lending relationships with. And we saw a lot of small businesses being turned away. And when you have a last in, first out kind of economy, which is what we're looking at in any time you have a crisis, your minority owned, your women owned, your veteran owned businesses that have not always had access to credit are the ones who then suddenly have to find an access point and are looking around and not seeing institutions serving them. And so we've tried to target money to institutions that we think will have more success with that. And we're continuing to work on that. And there may be more reforms that are needed, but it's certainly something that I'm aware of and that my office is aware of. The Congress has already, as I said, set aside money for some institutions that we hope will have better success there. But this is an ongoing process, and I'm not happy with some of the inequity that we've seen in terms of who's gotten what, but we're still working on it. And I can tell you that no one that I know wants to see any small business not get access to this program. The funding is there. We just have to make sure we get the information and the support there.
Yeah, and I'll just build on what Colin said. I mean, if there is any business that has not gotten access to PPP that needs to, by all means, call my office. We were hot and heavy working on this very hard for the first 30, 60 days. Helped a lot of businesses and have helped a lot of businesses. And if there's one that that has not gotten access to PPP loan, I mean, we're all over it. We want to make sure that happens. And I just want to give a shout out to the banks, especially the local community banks that were really on the front lines of getting the PPP plan up and running. I mean, this was an absolutely Herculean effort. I mean, the SBA made more loans in the first 14 days of PPP than they had made in the last 14 years. I've got a buddy over there who's pretty senior at SBA, and he said, look, in my wildest dreams, I never thought taking that job would mean lending out, $500 billion in 3 months. I mean, that just never crossed his mind, right? And to use the banking community, the way they stepped up. And I mean, I was talking to bankers who were up all hours. I mean, Saturday night, Sunday night, just cranking, trying to get this thing through. And there were absolutely a ton of bumps and bruises along the way. I mean, I remember telling one borrower, I said, look, if you want a perfect plan, come back next year, we'll have it for you. But right now there's going to be some bumps and bruises because we are literally assembling the aircraft in flight. And it was unquestionably a team effort and just, but again, I think the bankers really deserve a lot of credit. They were not even eligible for the PPP plan. They couldn't even get access to a PPP loan. I know that some of my colleagues, Republican and Democrat, are like, hey, why are we not letting banks at it? Like, don't worry, they're getting origination fees. They'll be fine. But the intent was to, and I think a lot of businesses were really benefited by it. But if anybody missed out, I mean, reach out to my office, reach out to Colin's office. Just like Colin said earlier, I mean, we're here to help and make sure you're taken care of, and let me know.
Way to go, Mary Bedowski and all the other community bankers who were on the call. Good job. So there's a lot of horror stories about what's happened during the pandemic. People who died, gotten sick, lost their jobs, industries that are suffering. But there's also some really heartwarming stories. Companies who are thriving, people that have done amazing things. I know both of you have been on town halls and listening tours, with your constituents. Can you just describe one or two of those that you've heard that you just think, wow, this is really special, that something, this person, this company did?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, to our several brewers across and folks here in North Texas have switched over their operations to making hand sanitizer at a time when we were entirely out of hand sanitizer and it could not be purchased. And Dallas County put out the call, and so many, these distilleries did that. And that to me was heroic. I mean, they're not making money on that. And that was something that they just did as a public service. And I think that it was incredibly important. It was during a time when as I said, access to PPE and folks getting, hand sanitizer. You couldn't buy it in the store. And that was really, really incredible. But, I just want to say something about our frontline healthcare workers, because, we have talked a lot in Texas about bed capacity, ventilator capacity, and how many more beds we still have, and how we still have room for folks in our emergency rooms. And that's true. But the strain on our frontline healthcare workers has been incredible. And they have made sacrifices far, far above and beyond the call of their duty, whether that is some of them, not coming home and renting hotel rooms or Airbnbs because they don't want to expose their family members, or taking on more shifts than they've ever done, understanding that if somebody in their ward gets sick, that they're going to have to cover their shift too. Just the heroism on the front lines of this in North Texas, right here down the street from where you live, in any of our hospitals here, has been remarkable. And those frontline healthcare workers are just the definition of heroes, and that they are still at it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so urgent for us to get this virus under control and to see us have these big reductions in our case numbers and in our hospitalizations. Because yeah, we have the capacity, but the strain on our healthcare workers is something that can't go on forever. And if we go into a flu season, that we don't know this every year, but every year the flu season already strains our hospital capacity and already puts our healthcare workers having to work harder during the flu season. If we go into that with COVID raging at the level that it is now, we're going to get into a place that we really don't want to be as an area. And so, to those healthcare workers, to any of you who have family members who or friends who are doing that, I just tip my cap and do more than that to them in terms of just saying, they've saved so many lives while risking their own, many times without full access to as much of the PPE as they should, particularly early on. And we all owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
Thank you, Amy Taylor, and all the frontline workers at Methodist Richardson.
Yeah, and I'll just key off what Colin said. Actually on my Twitter feed, we got a hometown hero that we kind of highlight different people that have gone around the community and done different things to serve, and it is really heartwarming the way businesses. We got a business in McKinney that was making paint, and now they make hand sanitizer. We got kids doing food drives, got restaurants that are feeding the hungry. I mean, there's some very heartwarming stories out there. And I will say, one of the big winners in this is innovation. I mean, the fact that we're having this meeting by Zoom, the ability to work from home. I mean, there's been some tremendous innovations that have taken place as a result of this, and definitely put a strain on all of us. I think every single person in this country has had their cheese moved, without a doubt. And so it is. But I just want to build on what Colin was saying about frontline workers. I was at the Baylor Scott and White Hospital in Plano a few weeks ago, and talking to their chief medical officer, and he said, "Look, in about the last 100 days, we have reduced deaths by approximately 2/3 by giving patients oxygen, not putting them on ventilators as quickly." Sending patients home with oxygen when they're test positive, giving them an oral steroid to reduce inflammation, rotating patients on their side and on their stomach, by Redisomir, by giving plasma that has antibodies. So if someone who's previously infected gives blood, then can save a life, and so that's a very effective treatment. And let me just say that is just unprecedented. In the history of medicine. I don't know where we've been able to reduce, a virus deaths by 2/3 by, different, doing some blocking and tackling medically. And so that's to me, it's pretty inspiring to see our medical professionals and what they've been able to do. And that's really why the death counts are going down, is just because the people who are, trying different medical things and getting some success there. And I will say the other thing, that little beacon of hope out there, Operation Warp Speed, which was not in the playbook. That was not anything some smart person came up with it. The administration pushed it. Colin and I voted for it with the CARES Act, and that put about $10 billion into developing 5 separate vaccines. And at the same time we're developing 5 vaccines, we are actually manufacturing all 5 of those right now. And so we will have literally hundreds of millions of different vaccines. So if any one of those 5 works, and hopefully all 5 work, 3 of those are in phase 3, and we're trying to, I think we're in the process of getting the other 2 into phase 3. But and the other thing is, one other thing I'll say is that the federal government has been very aggressive in this throughout this, right? So remdesivir, the first 3 months of supply, 100% went to America. We literally walked in and wrote a check to buy 100% of the world supply of remdesivir. And there are Americans that are alive today because of that. We went in, the United States government bought every glass vial in Europe. The Germans are mad at us because we literally bought them out of the glass vials that they make, so that we would have enough glass vials for our vaccine. So we've unquestionably been aggressive in what we've done, and I think that we have reaped the rewards of that. But part of it is the funding that Colin and I voted for, and as we try to go through a really difficult time. I'm optimistic that one of these 4 or 5 vaccines is going to come through on the other side, and we'll have the supply. And there'll be a discussion about how to distribute it and all that. But I'm optimistic for the future, and I think this has unquestionably been a very, very grueling experience, and obviously a really heartbreaking one for those that have lost loved ones.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for spending some time with us today. Thank you for all your service to our country. Good luck on your re-election campaigns. We do have an election coming up. I do want to acknowledge the fact that the chairman of the Chamber Board, Stan Bradshaw, is with us today, as well as Barbara Bafford, the immediate past chair of the Tech Titans Board of Directors. Erickson, thank you both for joining us. And the other tri-chair who's of our Public Policy Committee, Randy Ford, with National Write Your Congressman, is with us today. And thanks all so much for being here. So Deb or Randy, you want to close us out?
I have to get off mute, sorry. Just want to thank everybody for participating today, and everybody stay safe and have a good week.
Safe travels. Take care. We'll see you soon. Appreciate your time.